Hello, students. This is Dr. Clark reporting from Paris. I have a lovely lady here by the name of Patricia. What is your last name, Patricia?
Patricia, yes.
And your last name? Your...
Patricia Godineau.
Godineau.
Yes, it's not very...
And she is a tour right here in Paris, but she is from Brittany, which is a northern part of... Western part of... Well, we're going to ask her some questions in regard to English. Patricia, at what age did you start learning English?
So I started at around 14 years old. I started with English first.
Good.
And then after 2 years, I took German also.
So you took German after 2 years of English?
Yes, exactly.
Did you have the opportunity, if you wanted, to take 4 years? Could you?
Yes, in fact, when you start the second language, you continue to learn the first one. So you have the two at the same time. Two languages at the same time.
So when you graduate from a school in France, theoretically you could be trilingual with 3.
Yes.
English, German, and French.
Yes, and then you can have another one. And you have choice between Spanish and Italian, which is everywhere.
Very interesting. Now, this is good for the teachers in the United States because we see the importance of being bilingual along the Mexican border or the Canadian border or in Miami, New York, in Chicago, many places in the United States. And I'm going to ask her, Patricia, this is the quintessential question that language teachers want to know. Why is it so important to be bilingual?
Here, it's very important here in France because as we are in the heart of Europe, of course, it's something badly needed, I would say. So we are just in the middle of Europe, and it's very easy for us to travel in Germany, Brittany, or even in Spain either. So you can practice a lot. It's very easy for students.
How about as far as economy is concerned?
You need to learn at least English if you want to work, of course. It's compulsory. Above all in Paris, if you want to work in everything, you need English everywhere.
English is very important, even in Paris.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. Very good. Well, this is Dr. Clark and Patricia, a very sweet young lady, and we're reporting live and direct from the Louvre in Paris. Have a beautiful day. Bye, Patricia.
Bye, bye. Thanks. Oh. Is now.
Second language acquisition. The who, what, where, when, and why. Second language acquisition. Behind me is Buckingham Palace, where it all began. What a fitting place to talk about English being such an important language, indeed, probably the universal language around the world. As a background for language, we're first going to ask the who of language. Who can learn language? Who can speak language? First of all, language is universal. Everyone who has the ability to listen and has normal capacity as far as biologically, as far as biology is concerned, can learn to speak a language. The Summer Institute of Linguistics in Dallas, Texas reports that there are over 6,000 languages in the world with at least 200 speakers. As far as babies are concerned, the first sound that most infants make is a bilabial, which is a B or an M. A B or an M, something that deals with the lips. Who can learn a second language? And for that, we are particularly concerned. Anyone can learn a second language. Now the big question is second language learned as first language? And we'll deal with that when we come to the question, how? But let me tell you that anyone can learn a second language, including adults, including this tiniest child. A person can learn many languages depending upon exposure. Now there is a question as to who can learn language quicker, adults or children. And actually the answer to that question is adults, if given the same opportunity. See, kids are given marvelous opportunities at learning language. They just jump into it. Whereas adults are generally placed in a language school where they listen, and it's a very artificial type of learning environment, and therefore they're not given the same opportunity. So, if given the same opportunity, adults can learn language faster than children, and more efficiently also. Next, we're going to go to the what in regard to language. There are many types of languages in the world. There's body language, sign language, braille, even flags, you know, they use on ships and things like that. There's Morse code, there's spoken, written, binary code, computer language. There's a computer language called COBOL, C-O-B-O-L. There's engineering type languages used for computers, etc. And that's what we're talking about, of course, today is simply language. And we're going to answer the question, what in regard to language? Language is basically a system of symbols and sounds that are committed to communication. There are 4 components that we're going to look at. And those are, number 1, lexicon, which is just a fancy word for dictionary. You've got to have words. You've got to have the basic vocabulary. After all, isn't that what a child learns? The first thing that an infant learns is vocabulary. The second component of language is phonics. There has to be some type of sound system. The third is grammar. There has to be some organization of the subjects, the verbs, the parts of the language. And the fourth component is semantics, is the speaking part, how we speak, etc. And then the fifth one will be graphics. I think I told you 4 components. There are 5. And the fifth one is graphics, which of course means writing. Whether it's hieroglyphics from the Egyptians to the most sophisticated writing of Shakespeare here in London, or close to us here in London anyway, graphics are very important. That's writing. Now our question in regard to English as a second language and second language acquisition is, what is second language? Remember, we're answering the question, what? Well, if we look at the what of second language acquisition, we have to say that basically they are same in principle, but not in the acquisition of how. And we'll deal with how later. And now we come to the question of where language. Where language? The answer is anywhere. Language can be learned, it can be exposed, it can be used anywhere. And basically at any time, and it's very natural. And also, language is fun. Where do languages derive? Number 1, they derive from a need to communicate, and that's probably the most basic. And number 2, they derive by geography. Whether it's Indo-European, such as here in London, which is a Roman-based or Germanic language, or whether it's Asian, Armenian, Indian, American Indians, African, or Oriental. There are all types of basic stratas or families of languages. And we can also answer the question where in regard to where are the languages of the world going? Well, actually, they are growing together. Yes! English, French, Spanish, we've borrowed Russian words. All the languages seem to be growing together depending upon geography, depending upon commerce, etc., etc. I was in Paris recently, and I noticed that there was a sign that mentioned Les Weekend. And in Mexico, which is very close to where we live, on the border in the United States, we see all the time the borrowing of words from English into Spanish, such as el sandwich or los hot dogs, which is a borrowing, of course, of the English. Of course, they don't like it too much, but we borrow from Spanish as well. The word rodeo, many words, particularly those dealing with cowboys and things like that. We borrowed thousands of words, of course, from French. Now we want to ask the question, where, in regard to language, where is language going? Well, it's going to the World Wide Web. Of this, we can be sure. The internet is growing daily. Now we're going to go to the question of why. Why of language? Number 1, language is social, and that's the number 1 reason that we have a language at all. Somebody had to speak to someone else. Was it Adam speaking to Eve? Perhaps. But the basic need for language, or the reason, the why, is social. The second reason is commercial. People wanted to barter and borrow and to eventually buy. We needed some type of verbal as well as eventually written communication. And a third reason, which is very important, is religion. Some religions of the world have their own languages which are sacrosanct to that particular religion. We might look at the Jews, who traditionally have only read the scriptures in Hebrew language, and the Muslims, which traditionally read their holy book, the Quran, only in Arabic. And we will look, of course, to the Roman Catholic Church, which until recently only allowed the Mass in Latin. whether the people understood it or not. So the third reason for language, or the why of language, is definitely religion. Education is not a reason for language, but actually education is a result of language. Now think of that for a moment. Education is not a reason for language, but is a result of language. See, a child before coming to school has a lot of reasons for speaking. They have to speak before they come to school. But actually, when they get to school and learn to write and to read and math and all of those things, they're actually learning a result of the language, not a reason for it. Now, in regard to second language acquisition, and that's why we're basically here, because most of us are teachers of English as a foreign language or English as a second language. Number one, the World Wide Web is over 95% used in English language. And in Paris, where I was just recently, there's a big controversy, well, in France, because the people have, the internet is bombarded by English, as you well know. And the people in France are a bit offended that so much of the internet is in English. Well, c'est la vie. Vive la France. Also, money, the why of language, the commerce, is very important. Now we're going to go to the when of language. The researcher Schumann said that babbling and crying are very important in the acquisition of first language as a baby. Piaget says that that babies will start speaking between the ages of probably 9 to 16 months. The verbalization will begin. At 2 years, language is almost fully developed in children. Of course, we never completely develop language. We continue adding vocabulary. At the age of 5, there's probably from 5,000 to 7,000 words in a child's vocabulary as they're entering school. Now, this, of course, certainly varies due to prior experience and many factors, I'm sure, but those are quotes from Piaget. Now, as far as we're concerned, what about second language acquisition? Well, you know that Cummings, in his Canadian research, says that the basic interpersonal communicative skills take about 2 to 3 years to learn. And then he goes on to make the claim that cognitive academic language skills take from 5 to 7 years to learn. Well, some people are now disputing that, and particularly those that are following the new method called transactional grammar, which says that English students can certainly acquire the language in academic language in much less than 5 to 7 years. When? We're talking about the when of language. When can you acquire language? The age is any age. Now, can you teach an old dog new tricks? Well, I don't know. I'm certainly an old dog, but I'm learning some new tricks. And some of those are German language, Italian. I have the Rosetta Stone, which is a CD program, and I'm trying to learn as many languages as I can. Well, those that I find that are quite interesting to me. And the answer is, you can learn language at any age. Now, researchers have shown that after the age of 72, the ability to learn language actually diminishes. But it's not due to brain function, it's actually due to physiology and to attention span and this sort of thing. So now we've covered the who, what, where, when, why, and how of second language acquisition. Did we cover the how? Now we'll cover the how. The how of second language acquisition. Let's start with first language acquisition. How do we acquire language, period? The way that we acquire languages is basically through repetition. You say something, I say something. When I was in Paris recently, it was very difficult for me since I'm not fluent in French. And so I did a lot of pointing and a lot of gesturing. And what they would say, I would repeat. And I left Paris learning, well, I added several new vocabulary words to my lexicon. And so how do we learn language? Basically by repetition. Now, as far as second language is concerned, although we do learn language basically the same way, which is by repetition and by modeling, monitoring, and modifying. And those are the 3 M's in first or second language acquisition, but particularly for second. Model, monitor, and modify. We've got to model language so that people can hear it. We've got to modify for the situation at hand. And we've got to monitor. We always monitor a child's speech in order to change it. Well, to correct it, just as we do in a public school. So the how of how is language achieved is very interesting, and what a more picturesque place to talk about language than right here at Buckingham Palace. Behind me is Buckingham Palace, is the residence of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It's always nice to talk about language. It's even more fun to experience language. I hope that you have a wonderful time learning another language. If you know 2 already, go ahead and learn a 3rd. And if you are a teacher of English as a second language or English as a foreign language, we welcome you to write or to call us at the National ESL Institute at 1000 East Eldora in San Juan, Texas, 78589, United States of America, or you can call us 24 hours a day at 956-787-2557. This is Dr. Clark reporting live from London. I hope that you have a very good day. Call us for any of your second language acquisition needs. We have catalogs that we can make available to you, and we can also let you know when will our next seminars be in your particular area. Have a beautiful day.